Number 5 returns us back to Normandy and throws us straight into D-Day at the Verzumer beach. Main features of the map are first the fortified coastal area with a strong solid bunker being the first objective, depicting the famous beach landing scene of D-Day. Followed by more fortifications in an uphill forest area, then a little village, perfectly switching the tone from mostly open natural areas to more closed urban areas. Followed by one of two optional objectives placed close to a beautiful orchard. Eventually completing the map with an objective as unexpected as amazing, the little chateau castle with maze-like aligned hedges in front of the castle and a dominating forest behind it. In terms of optics, fun and objective quality, this map is an absolute winner. Not only does every objective look very nice and distinct, but it also surprises you after successfully accomplishing the beach landing with a series of unexpected objectives, each with its own distinct feeling. With the castle of course being the main highlight of the map, because not only does everyone like castles and especially fighting in castles, but also because it feels like the absolute perfect objective to conclude a long day of fighting. With all of that, it becomes easily clear why Verzumer is the by far superior map compared to the actual D-Day map. Since that one suffers not only from very redundant objective design, but also straight up not really fun to play objectives. So, are there any downsides of Verzumer? Yes, there are. First of all, the objectives are very swingy, meaning some of them are very attacker biased, some of them are very defender biased, making it quite hard for new players, since as long as you don't know how to perfectly play the strategies, you can easily get stuck playing one faction or the other. And the second imperfection is Verzumer being very tank biased. Meaning the coastal bunker on the beach landing is easily won over by the side with tank supremacy. Same is true for the second last open area objectives, and especially, or for some people unexpectedly, for the chateau, because shelling inside of it with high explosives from far away makes sure that either no defender can stay alive and the objective gets taken easily, or no attacker can stay alive and the point will be held indefinitely. So overall, it's an absolute top tier map, not only for its historical value, but also for its amazing overall design. And finally, now it's time for the 4 horsemen of Enlisted maps. These are not only the 4 absolutely best maps in the game, but they also coincidentally represent 4 completely separate areas of the war. The first of them being Lehrter Bahnhof at number 4. This map not only absolutely looks amazing and feels amazing, but it also perfectly, historically accurately depicts the state of Berlin in the last weeks of April 1945. Unlike Reichschancellery, which has strong competition with Hermann Göring Street and other Berlin maps for its top 10 spot, this one easily learned its placement. Reasons for that are, unlike the other Berlin maps, it doesn't suffer from bad objectives. Besides Lehrter Bahnhof, it's actually hard to pick a best Berlin map because all of them have at least 2 not fun, badly designed and very imbalanced objectives. The main reason why Reichschancellery surpassed the rest is that it offers multiple game modes, invasion, confrontation and conquest, and its conquest version is even so good that even despite being one of the least liked game modes in Enlisted, its 5 objective conquest version remains a constant player favorite. Lehrter Bahnhof in theory also has 3 game modes, conquest, destruction and invasion, but they are so rare that invasion makes up the vast majority of all games on this map. So even despite less versatility, Lehrter Bahnhof beats all the other Berlin maps combined due to its high quality objective design and the fact that no matter where you're playing on the map, it's always fun. The central station objectives themselves are great, they look amazing. The old architecture gives you a perfect immersive feeling. They are great for infantry warfare, especially engineering. Later onwards, tanks become more and more relevant, with the central outside objective being perfect for tanks and for planes, and the derailed train surrounded by a river, a bridge and tall buildings is a blast to play. The only real downside the map has is that it's quite defender biased, making it extremely hard to advance, no matter from which side you're attacking. But if you like urban warfare, if you like Berlin and especially late war combat, this map will be the best for you. Overall, Lehrter Bahnhof is so great, it easily surpasses all the urban maps of Normandy and Stalingrad combined. On number 3 we have the crown jewel of Tunisian maps, Oasis. If you like North African desert warfare, chances are very high this will be your favorite map. And it's very easy to love it because this map gives you all the reasons. Both starting sites feature very cool looking medieval Arab settlements, followed by little tropical looking forest areas making up the oasis part, and in the center is the big highlight, ancient ruins from the Phoenicians. Having stood there for over 2000 years, like they waited to make this map perfect in our time. The main selling point of Oasis is obviously the overwhelming beauty of it. Even compared to other Tunisia maps, it's the only one who perfectly encapsulates an exotic desert feeling. This means, should you ever get tired of Moscow's cold, snowy maps, or Normandy's green maps, or Berlin's and Stalingrad's grey maps, Oasis becomes the perfect map to dive into a completely different world. And the best thing is, it not only looks absolutely perfect, but it also plays very well. Despite some of the objectives looking similar, every single objective offers a different mix of infantry and vehicle warfare. And thanks to the constantly changing elevations and sand dunes, it also feels like an absolutely real landscape. For those who love playing engineers, this is an absolutely perfect map, but also for those who like stealthy commando gameplay. But the true kings of the sandy landscape, as in real life, are the tanks and planes. But even despite this bias, unlike the Quarry map, Oasis still gives you proper ways to win the game with playing only infantry. This leaves us with a basically perfect map. It's super fun to play, it's absolutely beautiful, and no matter which objective you're currently fighting on, every single weapon type is viable. Regarding how the battles go, Oasis even might be one of the most historically accurate maps in the game. Because this is one of the few maps where you constantly see tanks pushing forward, escorted by infantry, with anti-tank guns and machine guns quickly being built to stop this attack. And then you see planes on both sides trying to disrupt the action on the ground, only to be shot down by anti-air guns quickly placed behind palm trees or the ancient ruins. These dynamic battles are absolute peak Enlisted experience, and are the main reason why Oasis is one of the best maps in the game. The only marginal downsides the map has is that some of the objectives are defender biased, and due to the complexity it offers, it can be very challenging and hard for new players. But once you get to know it well, I guarantee this will be one of your favorite maps in the whole game. And the best thing is, it never gets boring. It's so amazing, it's so fun, it's so beautiful, I could play it 10 times in a row. Following the hot desert oasis, there couldn't be a stronger contrast with our map on number 2. Because the second best map in Enlisted throws us straight into a snowstorm in winter of 1941. One of the oldest maps in the game, the Fortified District. Ironically enough, this map is very similar to Oasis. Instead of having a desert landscape with multiple distinct objectives scattered around it, we get a perfectly immersive Eastern Front type landscape with 5 very fun to play objectives. Fighting yourself closer and closer on your approach towards the gates of Moscow, you suddenly find yourself stopped in front of a, well, heavily fortified district. So unlike Oasis, where you can freely roam around with your tanks, here you have to apply lots of strategy and planning if you want to make your tanks effective. This nicely limits the power level of tanks, making them very well balanced with infantry and planes overall. And this in turn perfectly incentivizes combined armed warfare, which saw its golden days famously under the name of Blitzkrieg, or more historically accurate Bewegungskrieg, in the early stages of the Barbarossa campaign. Which is exactly the period of time that Fortified District depicts. So this map not only feels amazing, it also gives you a very nice layer of historical accuracy while playing it. As for any top tier map, every single objective feels distinct and is very fun to play. You start out in the forest, rushing through the woods, attacking straight into the fortified line of a trench system with a central bunker. After capturing that, you have to either invade a hilly forest area or a very nicely modeled, bombed out convoy across a long road. Then comes another trench system with a wooden bunker this time, surrounded by a forest part on one side, a hilly forest part on the other side, and a village behind it. After succeeding here, you have to go deeper into the village, where you already see that the village is located next to a giant frozen over river. That also indicates the last objective, a heavily fortified bunker behind the river on top of a hill. The best thing about these objectives isn't just that they look amazing and are very fun to fight over, but also that the transition from one objective to the other every time feels completely different and like a new challenge. The biggest of them all, of course, being the river crossing attack combined with an uphill placed bunker. But unlike normal river areas, which give you huge problems crossing it, Traversing this frozen over river is very easy. Only problem is that it's a wide open area, meaning you can easily be shelled or sniped from far away. But this also creates a very cool looking and also functional no man's land in the center between both factions. Overall, this isn't even bad because usually if you get into a situation like that, the attack comes to a standstill and the defenders most of the time win. But here, the map is very well designed regarding the placement, the natural spawns of attackers and defenders. So the defenders are spawning further away, and the attackers, especially if they play well and strategize well, are gonna have a significant time advantage, meaning despite the defenders having a better position, the attackers can have a strong time advantage and be just much earlier on the point than the defenders, and perfectly balancing the defender bias out. So, Fortified District, basically a 100% map in every single aspect. Only downside is that some of the objectives can be very hard to take, especially for new players. This is also the only thing that keeps this map away from being the absolutely best one in Enlisted. Before crowning our king of Enlisted maps, we have some honorable mentions. They are all great maps as well, and depending on personal preference, could also be included in the top 10. Reasons for me to not having included them are either balance issues, or too many objectives feeling redundant, or too strong similarity to other maps which are straight up better. For example, it's very hard for a Tunisian map to get into the top 10 if it has to compete with Oasis, which is one of the best maps overall. And the next two best maps are, for example, very similar to Oasis, but just straight up worse. For example, we have the Tunisian Fortress map, which plays quite similar to the Fortified District, but overall is much less balanced and feels a little bit too redundant. If you create a top 10 list yourself, you likely will end up with roughly 15 maps, forcing you to cut down to only 10. And one of the best quick tests you can do in that situation is ask yourself, which of these maps would you love to play 10 times in a row without them getting boring? And Fortress doesn't really pass the test. What passes the test is the Gorge map, but the map is one of the most complicated in the games due to the massive rivers, making it actually very hard to play, especially with the lacking Enlisted AI. Another close top 10 contender is the Pacific Alligator Creek map. Whereas most Pacific maps suffer from very redundant map design, meaning every second objective looks the same, feels the same and plays the same, Alligator Creek among them is definitely the best because it actually features something like a unique feeling for every single point, and every single point is also quite balanced. But the problem with Pacific in general is that it's very infantry heavy, since you can't really move around your tanks that properly. And if you want to play planes, even if the map allows it, the fact that you have to start from a carrier also invalidates planes very heavily. Next we have Birch Grove from Moscow. This map almost made a top 10 list for its design alone. It's the only map in the game that features a perfect white snow, black charcoal ruins and red burning pellet. Though being gorgeous alone isn't enough, the biggest problems with this map are that it's heavily defender biased. No matter which side you start from, you're gonna have huge issues capturing even the first objective. But even if you go deeper into the map, some of the objectives become even bigger problems, for example the trench system on top of the hill. Combine this with the fact that tanks have a hard time maneuvering around the map, and planes also have a hard time, mostly due to the thick smoke coming out of the ruins, and you get a map that's very nice to look at, is very fun to play, especially if you love playing infantry only, but due to its limitations can't enter the top 10. Another very famous and much like Moscow map is Monastery. I already addressed it, comparing it to the maps that actually made top 10, and the main reason it couldn't get in is that comparing it to the other maps, it's actually lacking. First of all, the first 3 objectives of the Monastery aren't even in the Monastery, and if you remove the last 2 objectives, this map is as generic as it gets, and compared to something like the Sokovo village, it's just straight up worse because it's more boring and the objectives aren't even that balanced too. But even the Monastery itself offers some problems, because getting into the Monastery forces you to get across a river, and this is, well, obviously a problem for the AI, which is always something you need to take into account, since it can ruin your games no matter how well you play. But even if you manage to overcome that, even if you manage to overcome the extreme defender bias that Monastery has, you're going to be faced with the problem that the game design doesn't give you many creative options. For example, you could enter the monastery from a far left little entrance into the wall, same thing as from the far right entrance, but the gray zone was designed in a way that you can't really do that. It used to be possible with a sword charge combined with a flask, and you end up with a soldier that barely survives and manages to place a very nice flanking rally behind the enemy zone. But this was on purpose removed from the game and from the map, and now you end up with a map that just, not really balanced and, barely fun for attackers to play. What saves this map are the actual fights inside of the monastery, especially the one tower objective on the wall, though you basically never see it, since as a defender, well, you usually win on the first objective or at latest the fourth objective when the enemies have to cross the river, and so you basically always get stuck and never see the actual highlight of the monastery map, the monastery. And finally, on number 1, the only map in the game I gave a 100% score, Ruins of War from Normandy. Among the top 4, it was a hard decision which one is the best, but Ruins of War bet the rest. Reasons for that are, it is one of the most fun maps to play in the whole game. It looks amazing. Everything that was true for Le Bray is also true for Ruins of War. The green atmosphere is amazing, the forests, it's one of the very few maps which actually features something like real forest fights. In addition to that, you get multiple building objectives, but it's not ordinary boring buildings. Some of them are a little barn area in a village part, some of them are a bunker, and also of course the central church. In fact, it's almost the only map in the top 10 that features 5 completely different objectives when you play it. And should you ever get tired of these objectives, the map features 2 different starting positions, but not only from one side, but also if the map is reversed. So the map can have 4 different starting locations, each of them being great. And to add even more swag, the map designers added a huge railroad cannon to the map. So in terms of look and design, the map is a clear 100% winner. Regarding fun as well, the map is amazing, every single objective is fun to play, and due to the huge amount of different objectives you have, you can play the map literally 20 times in a row and experience completely different engaging battles every single time. Regarding different playstyles, the map supports everything thanks to the smart objective design. You can use tanks on every single objective, even fighting for the church, since heavy tanks will have problems traversing through the city, but light or medium tanks, which are small and fast, will be amazing. This is something very few maps succeed in, making all types of vehicles viable, not only the strong heavy ones, but also the nimble light ones. Planes are amazing to use too, because not only are half of the objectives open, but even the closed objectives still force you to build some rally points around them, and all the closed objectives have at least wide open areas around them, and even if everything is well hidden, you still have the tanks roaming around, and they are prime targets for your rockets and bombs. And whenever there are so many tanks and planes roaming around, your engineers can work overtime, since anti-tank guns and anti-air guns become extremely valuable. And on top of it all, the transitions between most objectives switch the viability of different weapon types. Meaning it's not optimal to constantly stay in a tank or plane or play only infantry, but instead adapt your strategies to the objectives and try out different units. Creating a map that's so dynamic to play, that has so many engaging objectives, and that looks so amazing and beautiful is absolutely peak genius design. So, are there any downsides in Ruins of War? Well, the only thing that could be mentioned in that regard is the fact that some objectives can be hard to take, especially the church, but if you play the map often enough, you will find ways that actually make these objectives quite easy to take. For example, the bunker can be easily taken with a strong flanking attack, or with constant artillery striking, or with an unanswered attacker tank shelling the area of the bunker itself and the background area. The church with well-placed tanks or cannons can also be easily constantly shelled, making it complete hell for defenders. And anything else is basically very easy to take, with the railroad cannon being extremely hard to defend, the barn area also hard to defend, and the central bunker also being not that easy to hold. So overall, compared to most other Enlisted maps, Ruins of War is possibly one of the absolutely fairest maps when it comes to playing either of both sides. Alright, that's my top 10 list. I'm absolutely convinced if new players would play these maps, would play only these maps in their first 50 matches, the game would be much more successful. Because the difference between maps on this top 10 list and honorable mentions and most of the other maps is immense. And the easiest way to enchant new players is to show them the most beautiful aspects of a game. And the easiest way to lose new players is to show them bad maps. So let me know what your top 10 list is, and let us know which maps are fun, which maps are maybe not that fun. I'm obviously gonna make a top 10 worst maps of the game list, and trust me, it's not that hard to do. It's not that hard, because there are some extremely heavy hitters that will easily get into the top 3. So let us especially know in the comments below which maps you think are underrated, because I'm always open to find some new hidden gems that are fun to play and that I can recommend here to everyone, and so more people maybe try them out. Alright, that's it. If one of your favorite maps was in the top 5, instantly drop a like, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to get more swag in the future. So, until next time, goodbye.